back to Mental Health Bar. Thank you very much for joining us this week. With me on the show today, we have the wonderful Imran Yusuf, comedian. Thank you very much for joining us. Imran, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm great as well. How's lockdown been treating you?
Lockdown. I've endured it. I'm quite satisfied with myself, knowing that I've dealt with it the best that I can, and it's not been perfect, but I responded to it by making sure that I maintained some form of like creative productivity
Yeah.
throughout it. And yeah, I've come out with a few wins, such as this lovely little office that I've built for myself. When I say built, I mean I've cleared out a room that we weren't using properly, filled it with books that I'm going to pretend that I've read, and
Yeah.
and
That's the
with
key.
funky cool stuff like that. And yeah, and given myself a space. I've got a space where I can be creative and get my work done, and that's been a huge part of a huge part of the progress that I've made, is that I have a dedicated workspace that I didn't have before.
No, I think that's important. I think that it's undervalued and I know that there's some people out there that are not going to have the space to do things, but I think no matter how small, I remember being at uni in Diggs and having like the smallest, tiniest room where if you open the door, it hit the bed. And,
Yeah.
and there was just enough room for like a wardrobe, or even no, it was just a chest of drawers. So I used to have my computer on top of the chest of drawers, and this was like year 2000. So you can imagine what the computer was. It was this huge thing, and I was quite. The only reason I had it was because my mum was working for Mitsubishi, so I got one of their old, like it was a 386. You know, like it was.
Oh my god! Even 38. No, come on. In 2000, if you had a 386 in 2000, I mean, you were struggling. Oh my god.
Yeah. This thing was so like it couldn't even interact, because the internet was a thing then, but it wouldn't even interact with our like campus's server. It would go, no, I can't. So I had to save everything on a floppy drive. I'd write it up in like whatever Word was on 386s, and then I'd take it in and put it in.
Oh my god! I mean,
campus.
you should have at least been on Pentium 2 in the year 2000. At least.
You know.
Oh my god! I remember it because in 2000 at home we had a P2 at home, and P3 was like, you know, or was like what was the one
Big
that you
thing.
should get. And now we don't talk about Pentium anymore. It's a word that is no longer used in any context.
So you just said that. And that's the first time I've heard someone say it in decade. Like, my kids don't know what Pentiums are. If I say George, we got Pentium, they'll be like, what? What type of metal is that?
Exactly. When we were growing up, we had a 486 at home, and 486 was the standard, right? And then the 586s were the Pentiums, and you're like, oh, I got a Pentium. Oh wow, he's got a Pentium. Ooh.
It was a big deal. But I remember having a computer and worrying that I was going to get like it was going to give me radiation poisoning, because do you remember the CRTs? You turn off the CRT screen. It had so it was so heavy that the top of the bookcase, not the bookcase, the chest of drawers it was on was bowing, and like bowing, isn't it? But the TV, you turn it off and it would go, you know, it'd crackle.
Oh yeah. Oh man,
so
they were the big CRT monitors. They were, wow. It feels it just, I can't believe it. Like, it's just that's what we were used to, these massive desktop computers that took, you know, ages to load up. But man, wow, you did that, and so you had a small room from which you learnt to work from.
Oh, that's what I was saying, was that even though I only had that, I made that tiny space, and it was much better for my mental health, just having that little area. And I think that that's what we all need, and that's what you've done there, is you've created your area with your book. I mean, have you read all of those? This is not where I was going with this conversation today, but
not many of them. Like, I'm quite and that might sound like a bit of a cop out, but I've read quite a few of them.
That's all right.
It's nice. I've got a nice eclectic mix. I've got biographies, books on economics, religion and spirituality, a lot of personal development. All of that is personal development up there. And then a variety of and then just there's just a bit of everything over there, including Jaws.
It's a great book.
Yeah. Yours 50p I got off you know, the little on the South Bank, they've got like a little like secondhand booksellers on the South Bank underneath the bridge. I remember just on a stroll after during my lunch hour when I worked around London Bridge, I just saw Jaws, and I was like, well, I'm a big fan of the film and I know everything about the film, and I've never read the book, and 50p, so you can't lose.
So why not? Yeah. And you've got, I can see some the originals up there. I can't remember who wrote that, but I've read that. That's a good book. So I'm guessing there's some.
Originals. Yeah.
Pardon? Yeah, the originals.
Adam Grant.
Adam Grant, that's it. Yeah, and a great book. So self-help books. So this is you said you've got self-development books up there. How do you feel about that? I think that you can get really, really good ones and really, really bad ones. And when it comes to mental health, there's a lot of them out there that you should avoid. And there's a
I would definitely agree with that. Also, I've done a lot of personal development courses. I've done probably every one you can think of, right?
I can think of two.
All right, Anthony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, Anthony Robbins' Wealth Mastery, Joseph McClendon's The Next Step, Landmark Forum, Landmark Advanced Course, John DeMartini's Breakthrough Experience, Richard Bandler's NLP week, and then another one with Paul McKenna as well. So I've probably done about 8 personal development courses in my adult life, and then I've got lots of books on them as well. And there is, first and foremost, you're very right that there are good ones and there's some very bad ones. And I think the very bad ones are people who've gone to personal development seminars and then gone, I can repackage this and write my own book of how I overcame whatever I went through. And half, with this half-baked thing, unlike someone like Tony Robbins, whose business and life has been committed to caring about people and learning how the human being can reach its higher potential. So I'd say out of all of them, Tony Robbins is overall the best overall, but then the others have very other specifics that they focus on. But overall, Tony Robbins, I think he's a legit guy. He's not perfect. Don't take all of it for gospel. And that's a great thing. He even says himself, he goes, if this doesn't fly with you, it doesn't fly. Take what works. But, I think he honestly does care about people, which is, I think a rare thing in the world of business and just maybe in the world right now. Sometimes it feels.
No, I think that's it. I think you have to be right about that. We have to take the bits that work, and you have to just be good about yourself. You can't just one person's idea is not another person's idea. It's not going to always work across the board. That's an absolutely correct thing.
He would want you to become a vegan, and I'm like, not happening, man. No, I've been vegetarian twice out of personal. I felt guilty about it, and I had issues, and then what happened? So I realized, I was like, oh, you know what? We eat too much meat and animals aren't treated well. And that has to be addressed. That still has to be addressed. And I'd gone vegetarian. This is on my second time I'd been vegetarian. I started to look and feel ill.
Right.
And I was watching a document. I was just in the house and there was a documentary on about orcas. And in this pod of orcas, there was an orca that they had adopted because one of the orcas had a deformed tail, like a congenital defect, or that had caused it to grow into an adult, and therefore couldn't hunt properly. So they had adopted this orca, and I thought, wow, this is an amazing. And what they did, in order to feed the orca, they would catch a fish, slice it in two, and drop half the fish so the one with the deformed tail could eat. And I thought, what an amazing, compassionate animal this creature is. But then that's not how they catch their main meal. No. How they catch their main meal is that they chase down a smaller whale until it drowns, because it can't get to air, and then they eat it. And in that moment, I went, you know what? I hope you all end up in SeaWorld jumping through hoops. I mean,
that's
and then
brutal.
I went back into my diet, and then chicken, and then I just went.
Orcas aren't fish. Orcas are mammals. Orcas aren't fish.
You know what?
That's racism. That's fish racism is what you just did.
I disagree. Orcas and whales and dolphins are fish. It looks like a fish. It lives in the sea. It swims like a fish. It's a fish. I'm not having this marine mammal nonsense, right? Like seals, marine mammals. They're doing it properly, right?
They're doing it properly. They live on land.
No, you're shaped like a fish. You're a fish, right?
That's definitely discrimination. That's definitely discrimination against.
It is, and they need to get back in the sea, right? That's where they belong.
Against porpoises. This is not. See, I don't have it. I would love to go vegetarian or vegan. I honestly would. I would love to go full one of those. I have tried. It's not for me. I'm not that kind of. It took me this long to start liking fish. I've only just started liking fish. I've only like in the last 3 years started liking fish. A big fan of sea bass. Like sea bass.
Is that red fish?
I don't know. It's white when you eat it.
On the flesh. Oh, it's white. Okay. Yeah. I find white fish is easy to eat, like haddock and preferably cod for me. But like salmon, like the redfish, I find it's quite pungent and it's too much for me. Like it's overload.
Oh, see, I'm okay with salmon, and I really like sushi now as well. So it's like my favorite thing.
You mentioned that. I saw that tweet about sushi.
Love it.
Do I need to be converted? The idea of raw fish makes me go bleh.
Same. And then we celebrated. I can't remember what we celebrated, but my wife was like, "We need to go and try. You need to try sushi. You're going to like sushi." And like my whole life, I've been like, "No, I'm not going to do that. Definitely won't like it." And she took me to this place in Birmingham, Toro Sushi. For those of you because we got people that watch in America and other Finland and places, so sorry about that. But if you're in England, go to Toro Sushi. It's the best thing in the world. It's this little sushi bar. It's only got 6 seats. So when it opened up again during the pandemic, it was only allowed 4 people at any one time. So that was my family. So I had an entire sushi restaurant to myself, and I know. And it was, so we went there, and it was it's the best. I don't know why I like it. I don't know why I didn't like it before. It's very odd, but it's the best. I'm very happy. So, but anyway, sushi.
You said that because you tweeted that. By the way, because you tweeted that, right?
Yeah.
I've gone. You know what? I'm going to try some sushi now.
Oh, you
because you tweeted. Because when the moment you said it, I was like, he feels the way I feel about sushi, but his feelings have changed now.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I'm going to give it a go.
I've got this opinion that you are not the same person you were yesterday. So I always think that you're a collection of experiences. That's what you are as a person. You're a collection of reactions to experiences. That's what you are. I actually did a tweet about it as well, and I talking about your own tweets. Jesus, what are we on the Conan O'Brien show? But did a series of I tweeted out about it. I don't have a career. I've just monetized a series of anecdotes and a desperate need for attention. That's what was it. And then I got rid of that because I was like, no, that's self-deprecating. What you know, I'm not into self. I think that self-deprecation is, I think it just chips away at yourself. It's a privilege. Right. It's a thing. Self-deprecation is a privilege for the rich. Rich people can be self-deprecating. Poor people can't be You can't be a workman who goes to a foreman and says, I'm pretty shit at building, but I'll have a go.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No. It's a privilege. Jack Whitehall, great self-deprecating comedian, can go on stage and go, "Oh yeah, I'm a little bit goofy, I'm a little bit weird, and I'm bad in bed." And everyone's like, "Oh, Jack is so funny," because everyone knows that at home he's been brought up by someone who is a millionaire, and he doesn't care. It doesn't matter. Whereas the same working class comedian saying that, it projects the wrong kind of image for that. It just chips away at yourself. You're saying it out loud.
Yeah.
But
I see your point. I see your point. You've got to be very mindful. I think it's also a culture thing. Like, like Americans, I remember Mark Breslin, the owner of Yuck Yucks in Canada, said, North America is the land of the overdog.
Yes, that's
the overdog, right? And there, and you've got to keep that in mind when you're performing here. I remember him, saying that to me, giving me some advice, because it was the first time I was playing in Canada. And so whereas here in Britain, it's really weird. British people have this British culture has this very reserved. There's a reservedness for most people, even though there's this great pride and glory in the military in Britain's past and all of that. There's still also just day to day in the street. You got to rein it in a bit. You got to wind your neck in a bit, which because it's a classy thing to do. That's why. But it gets to the point where you can self-deprecate so much where you're like, oh man, this is quite pathetic now.
Yeah. It's too much. But you said that. You see, just when you said that's the classy thing to do. It's classy. It's classy. That's what. And I had an argument with someone on Twitter about this yesterday because they were saying you should be self-deprecating because it's not good to be a braggart. And I was like, first of all, it's not 18th century Britain, who uses braggart anymore, but also it's a very British, like you said, it's very British. They don't do that in Norway. They just want you to tell them how good you are at a thing. Please tell me how good you are at this thing so I can assess whether or not you can do this thing.
I'm all right. That's the correct British answer. I'm all right. Yeah, and that really means I'm the bollocks.
I'm better at it than you think I am. But if I was there like, I need brain surgery, and the neurosurgeon came over to me and was like, well, there's better, I'll be like, get the better one. Don't you work on it. I'm all right. I don't want you. I want the best. Whereas, like, I think that's a cultural thing, and I think it is very much built on rich people being self-deprecating to each other in the 18th century, all that time when we were like that, and then it filtering down through the classes where the working class were like, we need to behave like them because that is polite in.
Oh, you think so? All right.
Yeah. Well, then it's like, well, it's not classy to say how much money you've got. It's not classy to tell someone in the workplace how much you're earning. Well, no, what it does is and then what that does is help keep everyone at different pay grades. You don't talk about how much you're earning with the person next to you. You don't realize you're earning 10% less than them. And it's all part. I think it's all part of the systemic classism in the UK.
Well, the class system is something that I didn't know about or understand until I became a comedian. Like I didn't know, like, growing up, just because if you weren't told, if you weren't given the definitions of certain things in life, you wouldn't assume that they existed. So I'll give you the very earliest example. I remember being in school here in Harrow, and we were taught about sexism, right? And I'm like, well, what's that? Well, men and women are equal, and you can't tell a woman that her place is in the kitchen and that she can't do things that man can do. And I was like, well, I've never assumed that ever. Like I've never. But now it's in my head, and eventually it would have, I would have seen in the adult world what's happening. But that's the first moment where, like, okay, all right, okay, and that was okay. So don't be a sexist. Okay, fine. And then the girls in our class were like, well, we want to play football with the boys in the playground, and immediately we just went, you're all right. Like, I mean, they were rubbish, but it was the first time they were playing football. The girls don't play football, but we didn't go, well, you're not allowed to play. That they were like, fine, you want to play? Start, just play. That we're no way going to stop you. And then I guess it's similar. And then later on in life, I learned about the class system, and that's through comedy. When I heard comedians talk about being working class, I was like, well, what is that? Like, I don't know what is. I didn't know what it meant. I just had no idea. And then suddenly, as I've grown older and I've done a bit of reading and going to museums and just trying to learn about how the nation was built, I was like, oh wow, there's this whole class system. And I think Reginald D. Hunter put it best. There's I think I only know one Reginald D. Hunter joke that I saw him do on TV, and he goes, "The class system is a way to discriminate against people who look like you."
Oh, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, I remember it. Obviously, he said it in that deep dulcet tone, dulcet tones that he has. I was like, oh, right, okay, so then that's what it is. And now, as an adult, I'm aware of what the class system is. But as a young adult, I remember just being at the Comedy Store, like 27 years old, I think I was. 27, 28 years old. And I was explaining to Don, I was like, oh, my dad was an accountant. My mom, was a housewife, but we owned a corner shop, it wasn't a corner shop, but I owned a sweet shop. And he's like, oh, so you've come from quite a middle class background. And I was like, what is that?
At 27, I think that's a privilege. I think that's a privilege to be able to do that, because my wife and I have this like discussion about class all the time, because she tells me I'm middle class. Now I've got a southern accent, so it always sounds like I'm middle class, but I come from a single parent family where my mum was out 8 a.m. till 8 or 7 a.m. till 8 p.m., 9 p.m. every day working. We got home when we were too young. We got home to babysitters because that's what we had to. And then as soon as I was old enough, I started looking after my brother. That was it. As soon as I got home from school, but we went on holiday to France because my mum would get like the pound. When they used to do the newspapers, used to get a pound ferry. Yeah. So she'd get like the pound ferry and then drive to the south of France 24 hours just so we'd get like a holiday. And Lucy's like, well, that's middle class. Having a holiday isn't middle class. My mum would take us to like the theatre, so that's a middle class thing. But at the same time, she did that because her work offered the ability. She worked for Mitsubishi, and they used to do day trips to like places. So it's like so I grew up very aware that we weren't particularly wealthy, but we were doing all these things that were what the wealthy would be doing. My mum did everything she could. She is exactly like Mrs. Bucket, Mrs. Bouquet.
Oh, that's an amazing show. My family loved that show. My mum and my aunts loved that show because they could see themselves in it, even though they could see the same power dynamics within their own community, within the old, the Asian community at large. You go, all right, we're like that. She thinks she's too good for her, and she's ashamed that she's poor. Blah blah blah. Yeah. But the class, so I didn't know about class. We didn't grow up rich at all. Like I think my dad did quite well, like before I was born, and then when I was born, and then shortly after things got tough, and he had a really good job being an accountant for like oil firms and whatever. Yeah. And then ended up we owned a shop in Hackney and we owned a shop in Harrow. I was only about for the shop in Harrow, but we lived behind the shop and on top of the shop, so we didn't have a proper house and a proper living room, and we didn't have like proper things. It was all like survival mode in this space, and that's what we used. But I had Nintendo. I had, and I would go. We didn't go on holiday, but we would, like I had I always had friends round. I'd always be, going to karate, playing football, playing video games. So there's this, but people are like, oh, we're going on holiday, and I'm like, ooh, fancy, like
fancy, yeah.
Holiday. I mean, we would never go on holiday because it would mean closing the shop, and that would never happen. But so class is something that I've only recently, when I say recently, only something I became aware of in my in adulthood. What is that? Like, what does that mean? And I think listening to working class comedians really opened my eyes up to, just the struggles.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That they had to face, and I'm like, holy crap! Well, in certain ways, I've had it better than they did.
It's really tough.
It opened my eyes.
Yeah. It's classism in the UK is really hard to, and I don't think, like you say, it's you've got the lines are blurred. Where you can't just say. My mum used to call us upper working class. It was a very weird classification. She's like, we're working class.
I've heard that. I've heard that before as well. Upper working class. I guess you make your own distinctions of just like, well, we're working class, but we've got it better than the other working class people around us, maybe. So maybe, but we're not as good as, I guess, what you might think. Then there's lower middle class, maybe. I don't know what happens. Just where does it end?
Where does it end? They're just shades of grey. But okay, so that's your background. That's where you came from. You came from Harrow, corner shop, Super Nintendo. That's why one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Friends coming over. You come from quite a nice background, but you like as in a nice family. Do you had a good family?
Well,
no.
I'm trying to think. My parents were always working. So we didn't get to, we lived in Hackney where we used to eat around a dinner table together. But when we moved to Harrow and we had the shop and the shop was always open, we couldn't eat together. So that changed the dynamic of, there wasn't a family time to sit down to eat together because someone always had to be in the shop all the time. And so my dad would work. My mum would be in the shop during the day. My dad would go out to work, and then when he would come back from work, he would take over from my mum and man the shop until like 9 o'clock. So then my mum could go in and get dinner. So it changed. And then also my brothers are much older than I am. Like my brothers are like over 10, so they're like 10 years older than I am, 10, 11 years older than me. So I don't. There's not a what's the word? It's not like we were, we weren't pieces in a pod. It was like they were like parents to me in effect, rather than people that I could hang out with, if that makes sense. So absolutely. I had cousins instead. I had cousins and my friends were closer to me. So that's my family dynamic was, I guess, not in the way that I'd see my friends going, oh, their mum and dad, and they have dinner, dinner around a table and they go on holidays or whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, we don't have that. We have it a different way. But I do have a good family. I have a massive extended family, massive. just there's loads of us. Like, it's just all over the world. Just on my mum's side, there's 50 cousins. Just on my mum's side.
50 cousins.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Like, I don't know if that includes, them and their kids, whatever, but it's just, either way, it's a lot. It's a lot.
That's a lot.
And we've got family in the States, in Canada, in Australia. When my brother was living in Japan, that he was out there. So I've always had access to a big community through an extended family, and also lots of friends and family friends. But yeah, we're Hackney to Harrow, with a bit of America stolen there, and here I am today.
Here you are today. I love the idea that you've got like a Yusuf B&B, like an Airbnb, but it's for Yusufs. Like wherever you go, you're like, oh, we're going to Japan. Okay, well, we'll just check to see if there's a flat there.
That's how I got to spend 5 weeks there. It's because my brother was, so when I say stationed, his work meant that he had to work between Singapore and Japan, and so he had an apartment in both places. Yeah. And so I was like, well, I'm going to Japan. 5 weeks in Japan, and because my accommodation was taken care of. But the thing is, I ate very modestly. Not that I eat loads, but I would go into a ramen shop, and a couple of bowls of ramen a day would suit me fine in Tokyo. And food there was really cheap. Like, especially when you're having a bowl of udon noodles with tempura, and that's like more or less all I would eat.
Oh, well, why wouldn't you? You're in Japan. Other than sushi, what are you having? What are you having?
Well, last time I was in Japan, I had one too many McDonald's.
McDonald's.
Yeah. So we went out. I went out there with Sega, who I used to work for, and we went to Tokyo, and we went to Yokosuka as well. And sometimes we're like, right, we just need to eat, and I just need to have I don't need any drama. McDonald's. I know what's involved. I know how to get it. I just want it. And what was hysterical is because now Japan is opening up its doors to foreign labor, but there's a limit. There's like you have to be a super immigrant in order to get a job in Japan, and even for McDonald's. And I'm being served in McDonald's by Indian guys from India who have learnt fluent Japanese. And as I get there and they speak to me in Japanese, I'm like, no, Hindi or English, right? Come on. It's unnatural for us to talk to each other in Japanese. It's going to be Indian language or English language, normal languages.
Normal languages. Listen to you. People. You sound like a British tourist in Spain. Normal languages, but English.
If it was a Japanese person, I would use my limited Japanese knowledge to communicate with them in Japanese. But when it's an Indian person from India, right? I'm like, come on. Like, well, I take great. I don't like to use the word pride, but pride still. I take great pride that I speak functional enough, good enough Hindi that I can speak to Indian people in India in Hindi and they understand me. Because I feel like I'm, like, hey, look, I've retained my mother tongue, and it's good enough that people in India understand it.
Yeah, and if it's good enough for that, then you can definitely order a McDonald's. I mean,
yeah.
Definitely.
But when he was asking me in Japanese, I was like, "Come on, man, this is not right."
This is not right.
But saying that, when I was in that same trip in Japan, I met a couple of journalists. One was English, white English, and the other one was white Dutch, right?
Right.
And I sat there, and they're like, "Oh, hi, we're journalists, and we work here in Japan for IGN, and we cool. do, and we report back to the Dutch and the English websites, whatever." And I was like, cool. And then I stopped talking to them and I turned away and they started talking to each other in Japanese. And I'm like, what? Why are you talking to each other in Japanese? And they're like, well, because it's easy. I'm like, but you both speak English. And the Dutch guy goes, oh, well, my Japanese is better than my English. And then they just could. And it was a weird thing for me to see two non-Japanese people, two Europeans speak to each other in Japanese. And I was like, wow, all right, I've grown today. I've seen something I haven't seen before that is actually quite normal in Tokyo.
It's probably quite normal in a lot of places where they're like, my English isn't as good as my, I don't know, Esperanto. That isn't a good chance.
It's just, I've been to the Netherlands. Dutch people on mainland Europeans, or people who've not suffered a Brexit, right?
Yeah.
Their English is great. They seem to think that it's not, and I'm like, well, I understand you, and you're making a point, and there's no problem. But maybe it's a confidence thing.
Yeah, it's better. It's usually better than like residents. Like when I spent time in Norway, I was talking to people and I was like, your English is better than mine. You use words that I would never, that are actually better, but I would fill I'd fill it with colloquialisms of like, oh, you know, that kind of stuff or that thing, and they would be like, no, that is the dragon fruit. And I'd be like, that spiky bastard, you know. That would be like and it's just that their English is just so much better.
Yeah, like that's also weirdly in India as well. Indian people speak better English than anyone here. It's weird because they just go for the biggest words because they've just eaten the dictionary. And I think maybe it's the upshot because it's one of the fastest, or I think the fastest growing economy in the world, or one of the fastest, definitely. Yeah. There's a hustle by India's middle classes to go learn, hustle. And I'm like, wow, this is really this is quite impressive. You know, I would love to learn a third language and be as good as, you know, a native speaker. You know, I'm trying to learn Japanese, but it's so hard. It gets so hard so quickly. Especially
when you already know 2 other languages that are different, completely different to it.
But that was luck. Like, so at home we spoke Urdu, which in Urdu and Hindi are somewhat, they're not identical, but they're so similar that when I speak what I think is Urdu, Indian people in India go, no, you're speaking Hindi.
Right, okay.
Like, okay, well, it works. So it works. That's all that matters, is that it works. And then English I learned I remember going to, so in Hackney there was a little, what do you call it? A nursery. It was a nursery, right? It was a nursery. And I remember the people who work at the nursery, they're not teachers, they're nursery people.
Yeah.
Right?
Nurses.
The
nursery nurses.
Yeah, nurses. They're actual nurses.
They are nurses. Yeah, that's the name.
Oh, really? Okay.
Nursery nurse. Yeah, that's what you are.
The ladies there. And I remember trying to talk to them in Urdu and then actually saying to me, we don't know what you're saying. And then slowly, just by being around other kids, I picked up English by the time I was 3-4 years old. And here I am now, as you know, the language that I use for the most part of my life. I only speak, you know, Urdu at home with my mum, elderly relatives, and sometimes with Miki Sharma and Atif Nawaz.
Other comics.
Yeah, well, we've got a little game. Atif speaks perfect Urdu, like perfect Urdu, right?
Right.
And Miki speaks perfect Hindi, and then I speak something in between them both. And so when we talk, both of them laugh at me
because it's like a Franken language. It's not
like I've got this thing in the middle, and it's just good fun. It's just it's good fun. I think languages are definitely a thing a skill to have.
They say that people with more than one language have a more stable people. That's what statistically they are happier individuals.
Really? I think what I had read somewhere that apparently being bilingual or more can actually prevent the onset of something like Alzheimer's, possibly.
Alzheimer's, dementia, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Possibly. But saying that, I guess my parents speak like 5 languages.
Jeez.
But, you know, I guess it's where, you know, so it'd be in Hindi, Urdu, Gujarati, Swahili, and then English.
Wow, Swahili?
Yeah.
That's
Swahili, because we're from Kenya. We're the Indians up in East Africa, and then so they grew up. They were born there. They were born in East Africa, so they learned Swahili. Yeah. And then the English being the last one. They didn't teach us Swahili, so every time Swahili is spoken in our house, I know they're talking about me.
I'd love that. Honestly, I would love that if me and my wife had our own language that the kids didn't know. Oh, it's so good. We need to, you know what? We need to get them out of the house. We need to get them out of the house for 10 minutes. We just need to, you just need a little one.
Yeah, I've got, so my girlfriend is from Mauritius, and so she speaks Creole, and
wow.
But the thing is, her parents speak Urdu and Hindi as well. So her parents speak the Indian languages and Creole and English. So when I've met her parents, I speak to them in the Indian language, and she doesn't know what's going on, which is a great advantage for me to have. Like, I can talk about her to her parents without her cottoning on to what's going on. And then she'll be like, I know what that word means. I actually know what that phrase means. Okay, what are you saying now? So it's a nice little, I've got a little, you know, kind of private line to her parents.
Yeah, you could talk about her presents in front of her. What she want for her birthday? Oh, well, she loves. Yeah, and you could just do it in front of her.
Yeah, exactly that.
I'm going to circle back to something because I want to talk about it, and I realised that we've already been talking for quite a while. You said you worked for Sega. Video games, huge part. I know you're a comedian, and we talked about being a comedian, but big video games, huge part of your life. So what I want to talk about in a minute about how video games are beneficial for people's health, mental health. But I want to talk about your experience with video games. What's happened? What's your timeline? You've got Super NES in Harrow.
Before that, like, I grew up. So when we were in Hackney, my brother had a ZX Spectrum 81. The ZX 81 Spectrum, where he was, he had that to learn coding, right? To learn whatever he needed to learn to do. Whereas also it had games. So I remember being about maybe 4 or 5 years, just really young. So playing games on it. You have a joystick that would have like 4 buttons on it. All the buttons did the same thing. You'd play games, and I loved it. And then my uncle gave me his Commodore 64.
Yeah, that was my first computer.
Yeah, and I loved that. And I only had like a handful of games on it for that. 2 of them were in cartridges. The rest were all on tapes. And then I got a NES. When I was 11, I got a NES.
Yeah.
And put in Super Mario Brothers. And the moment I heard, I remember the moment I just went, when I grow up, I'm going to make these. I want to make these games. And then pretty much it was like an extreme thing. Like after that, I've got all my old consoles. I know everything there is to know. And eventually got to the games industry. But your question is about how they're related to mental health, I guess.
No, well, I was just an organic way of getting there. I wanted to see. So you playing video games your whole life, and you've been, and you went into the industry. Were you actually making games in the industry? What were you doing in the industry?
Yes, I never became a games designer. At first, so I failed my GCSEs because I was playing too many video games. Also, high school, like secondary school in this country it is not something that works for people like me, for a person who needs to learn the way that I need to learn. I can't just be put into a uniform and be screamed at. Like, it's just not going to work. No. It worked at karate because I enjoyed that, right? But it didn't work in school, right? And I went on to college, dropped out of university, and went, right, I'm just getting a job in the games industry. And I got one. I made it happen. Like when you really want something, when you truly, not when you, I would like that. When you're like, man, I have to have this. By the end of the summer, I got a job in the games industry, and I started off as a games analyst, which was the company's fancy way of saying the gopher boy, right? And then I worked my way up into becoming an assistant producer. Then I quit, took some time off, and came back to the games industry as a tester. So I took a drop, made amazing friends, and then did that for a while, freelanced, assistant produced something, and then comedian. But I think the impact games really have had, one, it's great escapism. It's great. It's great, safe escapism. Even the violent games, great escape, because you don't do, games don't create violent people. Like if you're a wrong-un, you're going to be a wrong-un, right?
You're a wrong-un.
I've played loads of Mortal Kombat. I've shot and hurt a lot of people in the virtual world. I would never. I get upset if I upset somebody. If I hurt somebody's feelings, even if they deserve it, I find and go, oh, that that's not quite nice.
Dwell on it, don't you?
So yeah, it's great escapism, but it's also to understand the word escapism feels loaded at times of trying to, shirk responsibility. Whereas what it can also be is for your mind to engage in these amazing worlds. When you go into a video game, you're part of its lore. It's like, I guess, Star Wars. When you don't just watch Star Wars, you're in Star Wars. You understand how the Star Wars universe works and what the Force is and who the Sith are and who the Jedi are. And if you're really into it, who the Jedi Bendu is, right? And the guy who's in the middle between the dark and the light.
The grey Jedi.
And there's so there's this, it takes you to an amazing place, and it opens up your imagination of the possibilities of things that you can experience within this digital world. And that is fascinating. Of like, you can just live, you have to live in the real world, but when you go into a video game, your mind expands in a way, and you think of all these amazing possibilities. And so I think and also great for your hand and eye coordination, which might sound like a euphemism, and of course it is, but it's great, I guess, it helps develop your motor skills, and your brain in a certain way. I think if you're good at playing video games, it's good for your brain effectively. You're exercising your brain because you're not just jumping around on a screen, you're actually solving mathematical problems. Every game is just a massive puzzle dressed up to look like, like a play. But it's actually, you're right, how do I solve this problem? And that's what life is. Life is full of problems that you have to solve. Even if it is opening a door, you need a key, right? Going to the shops, earning money to pay for the things. Life itself is a variety of different puzzles. And I think video games actually help you develop those skills, at least in your mind, in a safe, kind of in a safe way where you can jump off buildings and not hurt yourself.
Well, that's it. Jump off buildings, not hurt yourself. You can take your frustrations out on your boss. You can, all the things that, going through a divorce, so you get the Sims and you wall them into the basement, not that we've done this, but name it after your ex. No, but so studies have shown, so this was the thing, is there's always this thing about Grand Theft Auto and people bringing it up, and Grand Theft Auto is responsible for carjackings. That was the latest one last year, but which I think is amazing, because I have been driving, I've been playing a lot of Truck Simulator recently, and I haven't once gone and grabbed a truck and taken a load of paper to Plymouth. Like, that's not happened. I've not been like, I did get a hat made. There's a hat up here that I made, a trucking hat. That's about as far as I got. But they always this Grand Theft Auto thing they bring up, and studies have actually shown that people who play video games, while are more likely to have mental health problems, are actually also more able to deal with complex situations. And the mental health problem is a false equivalency, because it's as you say, it's the escapism thing, where someone with a mental health problem is more likely to seek an activity that has an escapism element. Dungeons and Dragons, role-play games, computer games, sports. If you're actually more likely to go looking for that. It's weird that these all compare together. Like sports and video games, people just don't think that's similar type, but they're similar types of mindsets. The person that plays Call of Duty is the same one that's going to go is like a similar mindset to the one that goes and plays football on a Sunday. That's I that's exactly what I do. Like, I was playing, before lockdown, I was playing football on Sundays and playing video games. And I guess, that's what it is.
Whether you, I see it at football. When I play football, I'm not aggressive and I'm not shouty. I play properly. Like, I can be, I'll, get in there, get dug in on the tackles and everything, but I don't shout at people or put people down and get angry at people. And some guys do. Some guys think that's their outlet at football, is to shout at other people because they've not marked the man and they let the person get away and they're rubbish in defense. I was like, no, it's just meant to be fun. And so it's not the sport or the video game that creates that behavior. It's whatever else they've got going on in their life.
We've all been in a first person shooter lobby where we find out that some 12-year-old Chinese kid fucked our mum. That is I think that's how I found my real dad. That was that's it. But would you say that video games had a positive impact on your life? I know that I keep bringing it back to this, but
entirely, absolutely, entirely. Video games have had a massive positive impact on my life, because I was like, look at the art, listen to the music, play the game and enjoy the experience. When you become good at a video game, it's so much fun when you're good at a game. Like, I've seen people who aren't, who don't play games. They try to play a game and they're just not into it, and they suck and they don't enjoy it. But though, I think those of us who have grown up, and instantly, the moment I pick up a game, like, it doesn't take me too long before I figure out, what the controls are, unless it's a Hideo Kojima game, because I still don't know what's going on. Like, I don't think
he does. I think Hideo Kojima makes him to challenge himself. He's like, oh god, that's a baby.
Like, how many? I'm there. My fingers are being contorted over the joypad to like open up a menu. It's like mad.
It's like Dance Dance Revolution, but for your fingers, where you have to
like. There's a friend of mine who loves Kojima games, and because he understands how to play them, and I'm like, look, I can't. It's too much hard work for me. But I pick up a Zelda, pick up a Mario, pick up a Metroid, a Call of Duty, and I'm in there within seconds. And if you don't play video games, you're missing out right now. It's like when art first came about, when people started painting stuff and like putting stuff on exhibitions, and you didn't go, you were missing out. You were really when music was being performed, and then you could listen to it and get it on different mediums. If you weren't part of it, you were just missing out.
Yeah.
And I feel that about video games are an art. And because I guess they've grown out of something that was seen to be infantile and for children, right? There was a stigma around it. But now you look at the games industry, the kind of people who work in it, and the people who play, and those of us who've become adults. I haven't stopped playing games because I'm 41. I'm like, no, this is the upshot. If you're an adult gamer, when you have kids, buying games is going to happen anyway. It's never going to be like, it's going to happen anyway. You're going to make it out it's for them, but really, it's for you, right? Or if you're not an adult gamer, when you buy that game, it's not for you at all. It's entirely for them. Right?
It is. Well, I got a Switch. Well, I didn't buy a Switch. They saved up for a Switch, and I can tell you now, that is it was after UK round. That was at UK. I forgot about that. Yeah, UK when you
on my Switch.
Yeah, and it was after you came round and you let them play, and they kept saying, "Oh, that guy came over," and I was like, "Imran," and they're like, "Yeah, the Switch guy," and I was like, "The Switch guy." But then they were wanting to save up for it, so they saved up for it, and I was encouraging it because I wanted a Switch, but I couldn't justify the expenditure, and I was like, "Yeah, save up for it," and then they got it, and they're like, "Oh, it's good. They must play it like once a month," whereas I'm like, "Yeah." I buy them games. Oh, I bought you a game. What is it? The Witcher. You're not allowed to touch it. Don't touch it.
Don't touch it. I'm taking the cartridge with me.
Yeah, you're not old enough yet.
I'm quite lucky as well. My girlfriend is a gamer and she watches anime, and so I've got we swap. We're like, "Oh, what are you watching? I've got this game. Are you playing this?" It's like we've got that going on, and that's going to be the perfect household. The kids are going to have games that they can play, but will officially belong to me.
You officially belong to you. I was going to say they belong to you and your partner. Just they're like, "Can we have a go now?" You're like, "Yep, tomorrow." Just hand on face, palm them out the way.
I'm going to teach them. This is. I'm being really serious when I say this, and it might sound over the top. Right. I think kids should learn to play. 1 second. Okay, just leave it there. It's fine.
I'm delivering one of his kids.
Yeah, I've got a delivery. I've got an Amazon Prime delivery. I think kids should learn to play the games that I grew up playing and complete Mario Brothers. No saves, none of the nonsense today. No rewind, no golden ticket. You've got to learn, and you've got to be as good as I am effectively, and you've got to learn to complete the games that I did with the conditions that I had to meet, right?
Yes.
And Mario Brothers is going to be the top of that. I've got a nephew who's incredibly good at Fortnite, which is a skill. Definitely a skill, right? But Mario Brothers, he was struggling with, and I was like, "These are proper games, right?
It's proper games.
Proper games.
I love their way.
Saves, right? You had to play it in one go and complete it
straight through. You can't go away. You can't have a Wii. You have to finish it. I did the same thing. We've got a NES upstairs. I made them go through it. So we've got like a NES. And then we've got an Xbox, and then we've got an Xbox 360. We also have a Mega Drive and a PlayStation 1, and I made them go through all of those, and then they were allowed. And there's a PlayStation 2.
Proper parenting.
Just taking them stage. But from young, so I didn't let them do it. It wasn't like, okay, this week it's the NES. It was like, this year you are going to be playing the NES. And they're like, this doesn't seem like the right kind of games. It's 2010. And I'm like, get back. They're teenagers now, so they're a bit older. But then they were like, this is it. PlayStation 2 was where they were like, this is peak. And I was like, Spider-Man 2 was there like, this is starting to get there now. And I was like, yeah, we're almost, you're not even close.
There's also a correct order to show them Star Wars.
Yes. Oh, I have a story about that.
I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Star Wars, we did the whole, right, so we're going to go and watch the first, what was the one back? Force Awakens. Awakens. And so I was like, we're going to go see Force Awakens when it comes out, because I'm not a massive Star Wars fan, but I was an original Star Wars fan. I didn't like the new trilogy, but the old trilogy I love. Anyway, we watched 4, 5, and 6. We finished 6, so we finished Return of the Jedi half an hour before we're off to go and see The Force Awakens. So we finish it. because I'm like, if you're not going to know what it's about, otherwise we're going to have to watch it. So we watch it. We head to the cinema. The first scene, and it turns on, and Leia comes up on the screen, and my eldest goes, "What the hell has happened to Princess Leia?" Because it's been 30 years, but for them it's been half 30 minutes. So she's like, "What the heck?" Because it doesn't say 30 years later or anything. It just like, you would know, you and me would know. But they were going, "What's happened to Han Solo?" I'm like, "Oh, he's and Chewie hasn't aged in that." So
and not at all, not a single grey hair, nothing. He just looks like Wookiees obviously live like a lot longer than people.
400 years. Wookiees live 400 years. Because so I know this because I've been on Rick Carranza, great comedian, does a show called Star Wars versus Star Trek, and I've
done that as well. I love that show.
I'm always Star Wars, and I'm not a big fan, but I've had to read up on it. But it turns out that humans are like Wookiee dogs. So Wookiees keep humans like dogs. So I thought that you've gone through a human. So I love the idea that that Wookiee's like, that Chewie's like, "Oh no, Han Solo's dead. Where am I going to find another person that has such a nice ship?" Anyway, sorry. So I've derailed it, but I've derailed.
I love this. This is really important. This is a really important topic, because in like thousands of years from now, Star Wars will be the religious underpinning of how like the majority of the world will understand reality, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it all start a long time ago in a galaxy far away, and then there'll be fundamentalist groups going, no, the right order is 4, 5, and 6, 1, 2, and 3, and then if you want but not compulsory, 7, 8, and 9, right? Which is the school that I'm going to start, right? And then they'll be like, no, you need to do it chronologically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And they'll go, no, those people, they're apostates who believe in telling the story in that order.
That would be it. That'd be it. And then you'd have like Scientology that likes the Ewoks Christmas special. They're like, that's the true religion right there. The singing, the Christmas, the Wookiee singing.
And that's what, in 2,000 years, that's what people are going to be facing.
That's what they're going to be facing 2,000 years.
That's what people are actually going to be facing. And like, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I write it down in like a book for my great grandchildren. Just go, the correct order is 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
The times capsule, so that people pull it up. Like that. Open, smoke billows out. There's a Darth Maul. There's a Darth Maul like bath soap dispenser as a statue. Another story about. So this is Star Wars is permeated by life. My mum bought like 5 of those Darth Maul bath soap dispensers. That's why it's stuck in my head, because she was of the generation where if you bought Star Wars toys, they were an investment. Like if you had them still. So in the home of my mother, where I was born and lived for a decade, there is several still new in box Darth Maul bath soap dispensers that she believes, or I don't know if she still believes, but she strongly believed were going to be her retirement fund at some point.
Well, okay, not necessarily her retirement fund, I think, but eventually maybe somebody's retirement.
It's going to be a lot. There's a lot of Darth Maul soap dispensers and Wookiee banjos and all the stuff around it.
You'd be surprised who kept them, though. It's all about who keeps it. Like, I just think, this. I'm trying to think of something I've got that's super rare. That will. I guess if I may show off.
Yeah, you can show off.
So I managed to get a signed copy of the original Killer Cut CD of Killer Instinct, the video game, from Robin Beanland. So the composer of the music in the game signed that for me, and it's sealed. Like, not only have I got it in this Perspex case that barely stays on, but it's sealed. And so, I mean, that's not going to be my retirement, but that's going to be worth something. Like, that's
fingers crossed.
In the 90s. I guess
amazing.
Maybe that might be the most. Oh, and also you can see that there. I don't want to pick it up, but that's a original animation cell from an anime called Hajime no Ippo, and it's apparently it's one of the last hand-drawn animation cells before they all went digital.
Oh wow! So that's a pretty cool. That is a pretty cool thing to have back there.
That's from the anime, yeah. So and a friend gave me that as a gift many years ago. So You never know. And I think original, the original, like if you had an original Luke Skywalker toy figure from 1970, whatever, what would that be worth now? I'm sure pretty
£25,000 is what they're worth.
For the figure.
Yeah, for the figure. It's in the box. It's in like the blister pack. Yeah, they're worth a lot. They are worth it. I know these things. We were talking about this earlier, and that's one of the. I retain weird information like that. Useless, absolutely. What am I doing with that? I don't have a Luke Skywalker minted box, but if I ever see one in a charity shop, I'm there. Just straight £1. Yeah, definitely that. Oh no, I'm done. But yeah, I was worried when you picked up the anime cell. I thought you were going to be like, and this is an original Urasaka Doji cell, and I was like, oh god, that's the first hentai, the first weird tentacle.
Oh
Japanese.
Right, no, I don't think I would have. Yeah, I definitely would. I hope my friend wouldn't have bought me something like that.
No, I don't think it is. I've never seen it, but I think that I thought you were, when you were going a bit. I was like, what's he going to say? Because we have had other people on there, and they started. You're like, oh dear, don't say those words. But yeah, so circling back, we've been talking for nearly an hour now, and we've discussed mental.
I've had fun.
I've had fun. I've had a lot of fun, mate. Have you? This is a quick one. Last bit. Have you, during your life or I'd say during your career, the mental health bar is supposed to be for people who have a mental health problem and see that you can cope with it and still get past it. That's what this is for. I'm bipolar. That's as far as I know. That's what it was supposed to be, but. You know, it might change in the near future, according to my doctor. But I'm bipolar. I've got a successful career and a life. It hasn't been easy, but you can get through it. You don't. I like coping rather than overcoming because it's chronic. You know, you never get over it. Have you suffered from mental health problems? And if you have, even if it's just anxiety or depression or something like that, temporary, what did you do to overcome them? That would be my last.
I think I grew up being told a lot that I wouldn't achieve anything, I wouldn't do well. Especially I think in my teens, and I found high school very stifling. But I had outlets such as karate and video games. But in terms of mental health issues, I think I went through a proper depression in my 20s after having started in the games industry, made loads of money. A lot of money for me. Like a lot, I was like, wow, I've got all this money. I never thought I'd have this much money. And I felt invincible. And that made me maybe a little bit arrogant. Then the tough times came. I lost all the money that I made. I couldn't get a job back at the same level. I was really struggling to get my life together. And I wanted to be a comedian. And I wasn't very good when I started out at all. And in my head, I was like, I should be a star by now. And that's not, I had to pay my dues and learn my craft. And I remember I was at Sega and I remember just waking up and just feeling miserable. And then I'd get to the train station and I'd see a colleague of mine and I'd try to avoid him because I know that he'll smile at me and he'll strike up a conversation. And I don't want to talk to him. So I'd go avoid him and go find another part of the train to sit on. And I'd do that. And I remember when that went on for one too many days, there was this moment where I went, I'm waiting for something to come and save me. I'm waiting for, the God, the divine, whatever, just to come in and go, I'm fixing your problem for you. And it wasn't coming. And I realized in that moment, if nothing's going to change until I change it, like I have to do it. It's me. And in that moment, I focused on going, right, I need to make sure that everything I perceive, everything that comes into my eyes and into my ears and comes out of my mouth has to be positive. And I more or less hotboxed myself into positivity. Went, right, I bought myself an iPod and I just put loads of positive music on it and I listened to nothing but positive music on the way to work and on the way back home. I started watching anime, and so Hajime no Ippo, it's a boxing anime, and my friend lent me, the same friend who bought me that gift lent me the DVDs to that anime. And I started watching that, and that started perking me up and giving me a fighting spirit, to head on to my problems. And then I learned about Tony Robbins. And when I first saw him, I just thought, charlatan, look at this liar trying to make money out of people. But he kept on appearing on my radar. Like, I don't know. And this is before surveillance capitalism algorithms, right? He just kept on appearing like on radar. And so I bought one of his programs and I was like, oh my God, this is genius. Like, I wish I had this when I was younger. And and so that's how, when things were really tough and I felt, everything had gone wrong, lost all my money, couldn't get a girlfriend, couldn't get, just everything was going wrong. I picked myself up from it when I decided, like, much like yourself in the conversation we've had, when you're like, I'm the one who's going to change. I deserve more. I deserve better.
Yeah.
I'm not going to settle for this horror show that I'm going through, and it doesn't have to be like this. And, I noticed what you said in your language there. It's about, it is a chronic thing. You do overcome something, but then, when you become strong enough to overcome something, something stronger comes along to overcome you. So then you can overcome that. So life is always going to be full of problems. And all you can do is continue to build your strength with joy and dignity, because you deserve it. No one's going to come around into your life and tell you. You shouldn't wait for someone to come around into your life and tell you that. You need to tell yourself first. And I've spoken to a few people about, how they went from struggling to really succeeding. And essentially it was like, when they learned to love and respect themselves, life changed. But it had to start with them. The language you use to talk to yourself has to stop being, I can't, I'm not worth it, I'm not good enough. All of that has to go, because that self-love, I know it sounds really schmaltzy and a bit too saccharine, but it has to start with you. You have to, when I say self-love, don't, start like, it's, just, don't let your imagination.
Right? We know what you mean.
Truly, think about a person you love and you respect, someone you look up to, going around that guy. And just the more I learned about you, Chris, after we met, and seeing what you've overcome from what you've told me and through the stuff that you've put out on social media, I'm like, this guy, like, you've overcome a lot, right? You've learned through self-love, self-respect, to get yourself where you are now. And it was such a joy to meet your family and to see how switched on, like, your girls were. They were like, I want to be an engineer, I want to be an astronaut, and they were kids, and I'm like, wow, these kids are switched on. You've done a great job raising them. So you're an example of that. You're one of those people that I often there's, I'll talk to people going, I've got a friend, he went through this, without mentioning your name, just got, give an idea of, like, this is where he was, and then you should see him now. And just how you got yourself into shape, because that's something you wanted to do. And whenever you post on Instagram or on Twitter about the things, I've just done a 5K, I've just, I'm doing this, I'm happy. That's great. Like, I'm happy for you, but I'm also happy that you have a following that are benefiting from what you're doing, because you're not necessarily trying to sell them, just here's my program, and you can only achieve happiness through my program. You're just going, this is what I've overcome, and you can overcome it too. You've not done it with, you didn't win the lottery and then suddenly just have like a team of people come in to solve all your problems. No. But the lottery you did win was the lottery of self-love.
The lottery of self-love. Well, it's an ongoing process. Do you know what? That's here. The thing is, you say that, it's just like, I'm now just blustering, because that's lovely of you to say, buddy. That's really nice of you to say.
Yeah, and honestly, I wish you write a book about it. Like, I know that there's issues around it all, but when you are able to, or in whatever capacity you can, you should write a book that I think will help a lot of people. That a lot of people who need it. I think I grew up watching Jackie Chan films, which was a big deal for me. Because also I think maybe because I grew up in Hackney, it didn't matter to me that there weren't people on TV who didn't look like me, or sorry, who did look like me. There was no Indian Muslim hero on TV, and it didn't matter because Jackie Chan. I was just like, I didn't look at it and go, that's only for Chinese people. I just thought, well, I want to do that. I want to become that kind of person, like that. That's what I'd want to do. And that alone, just and ultimately Jackie Chan's philosophy in his films and in his life is, when you lack, because he came from, he was poor, he didn't come from money at all. It's when you lack all the bells and whistles and all the money and all the muscle and investment, as long as you have a lot of heart, you'll be okay. And that's why he's got to where he's got to, is because he always had a lot of heart. And it's amazing, how we can transform ourselves when we tap into, the millions that we have in here, as opposed to, trying to seek the millions outside of us.
Yeah, and no, I think that's a really nice way to put it. Millions inside of us instead of the millions outside of us. I really like that concept of it. Oh, that's nice, man. Thank you very much for that. That's a really nice fight. Like we'll end it there because that's a lovely place to end. So Imran, can you tell people where they can find you if they want to catch up with you?
Yes, you can find me on the internet. I am all over that. You can find me in real life as well if you want to stalk me. But I've got a girlfriend now, and she's quite possessive. So it's you can find me. So if you go to imranyusuf.com, that's my website. The latest thing that I've had out is a Radio 4 pilot, which is available on. So if you've got access to iPlayer or if you just YouTube it, it's called Imran Yusuf Relabeled, and it's a pilot episode of me exploring the labels that define me. And episode 1, the pilot episode, is about being a man. What does it mean to be a man, and why, with the experiences that I've had that make me say, I'm a man, this is what it means. And it's what it means to me. It's not what it necessarily means to, lots of other people. But there's plenty of stories in there about playing football in Jackie Chan films that, you'd enjoy.
Oh, so that's lovely. We'll put links in below as well when it goes out on YouTube and it goes out on all of the podcast places. There'll be links and stuff to all your things as well. So you just click the link below or to the side, depending on how you're watching this. But thank you very much for joining us, Imran. This has been the Mental Health Bar, and I've been Chris PG. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next week.